I was 43 years old when my stepmom told the photographer to crop me out of our family Christmas photo. She said it in her calm, polite voice, like she was asking for an extra napkin. She didn't think I heard her. She didn't think I mattered enough to care. She had spent 12 years telling people I wasn't my father's real child. She never expected me to have proof she could not bury. That day, she tried to erase me from her picture-perfect holiday card. She didn't know her own Christmas card would end up telling the truth she hid for more than a decade. Before we get deeper, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. It helps more people hear stories like this. My name is Nova Keaton. I grew up mostly with my mother after my parents divorced. When I was 22, my father married Harper, a woman who walked into every room like she was auditioning to be the town's first lady. She was charming, polite, and obsessed with image. People loved her because she knew how to speak softly and smile at the right time. What they didn't see was how she used that same soft voice to cut people down when it suited her. My father, Daniel, was always gentle and patient, but he never knew how to stand up to anyone. He hated conflict so much that he let Harper shape the rhythm of the house. She decided who mattered and who didn't. She decided how the family would look to the world. And from the beginning, she decided I didn't fit her picture. Whenever she introduced me to someone new, she used vague lines like, "This is Nova, Daniel's daughter from his earlier years." Or she told people, "Nova stays with us sometimes," as if I were a distant relative or a tenant passing through. She kept her words polite enough so no one could accuse her of being rude. But every line chipped away at my place in my own family. My room was always the smallest guest room, even when Liam, her son, moved out for college. Harper said she needed extra storage space, and my room did the job. When guests came over, she would say, "Nova, why don't you help in the kitchen so the family can catch up?" She said it with a smile so warm that no one ever questioned why I wasn't included in the living room conversations. My father saw all of it. He saw me being pushed to the edges, treated like a visitor. He always said the same thing. "Let's keep the peace, Nova. It's not worth starting something." But keeping the peace meant losing my place. The only real support I had was my Aunt Tessa, my mother's sister. She called me every week. She listened without judgment and told me the truth no one else in that house would say. Harper wants control. She wants the story to be hers, not the real one. But truth has a way of showing up even when people try to hide it. Every Christmas, Harper sent out 200 holiday cards. It was her favorite tradition. She treated it like a public announcement of her perfect blended family. She designed matching outfits. She booked photographers months in advance. She made sure every detail reflected the life she wanted people to believe she had. That year's photo shoot was supposed to be like every other one. But that was the moment Harper crossed a line I could not ignore. That was the year she forgot something important. I may have stayed quiet for a long time, but I was still my father's daughter, and I had the proof to show it. The day of the Christmas photo shoot arrived cold and bright, the kind of December morning where the sun looks warm, but the air feels sharp. Harper picked a small barn on the edge of town that was decorated with wreaths and soft white lights. She liked places that looked rustic, but still expensive, and this one fit her style perfectly. I drove myself there, as usual, because Harper always found a polite reason why there was no room for me in the car. When I stepped inside, I saw Harper fixing the collar on my father's sweater while talking to the photographer in her gentle, cheerful tone. Liam stood to the side, scrolling on his phone. No one looked up when I walked in. That was normal. I chose a simple green sweater for the picture because Harper had said the theme was winter forest. She turned to me with a quick smile that carried more judgment than warmth. She said, "You went with green. All right, we'll see how it photographs." It sounded like she was talking to a stranger who showed up to the wrong event. My father tried to give me a small smile, but he stayed quiet, the same way he always did when Harper made comments like that. When the photographer, a kind older man named Bill, asked everyone to stand together, Harper stepped forward and said, "Let's get the immediate family first." She placed a hand on my father's shoulder and pulled Liam closer to her other side. She gave them perfect smiles, the kind she practiced for church events and charity dinners. Bill looked at me, and then back at her, unsure what to do. Harper caught his expression and said, "We'll add Nova at the end for the group shot if there is time." She said it so casually that Bill nodded and raised his camera without asking any more questions. I stepped back and folded my hands, trying not to show what I felt. A woman my age should not feel like a little girl being sent out of the room, but that is exactly how she made me feel. The next part hurt more. As Bill was adjusting his lens, Harper leaned toward him and spoke in a low voice, but not low enough. I heard every word. "For the card, make sure she is cropped out. We are doing a clean look this year." The words hit me like a punch that did not raise its voice. Harper had always been careful with her cruelty. She did not scream. She did not insult. She just rewrote the story in small ways until people believed her version. Bill froze for a moment, clearly uncomfortable. He glanced at me again, and I forced a smile, to let him know I would not cause a scene. My father pretended not to hear. He adjusted his jacket again as if that could distract him from the truth happening right in front of him. Liam smirked under his breath like he was watching something he had seen many times. When Harper finally said, "All right, let's bring Nova in for one picture," I stepped forward and stood at the end of the row. She did not shift to make space. I felt like a cardboard cutout placed at the edge just to keep up appearances. The whole session lasted less than 15 minutes, but the weight of it stayed with me all day. On the drive home, I kept thinking about every time Harper told her friends that I was Daniel's daughter from a previous arrangement, or someone who stays with us on and off. She never said it with anger. She said it as if it were a harmless detail. That was what made it worse. She did not think my identity mattered enough to be truthful about it. Later that evening, we returned to the house. Harper hung up her coat and immediately began talking about holiday dinner plans as if nothing had happened. My father followed behind her silently. I went to the small room Harper still called the guest space, even though I had slept there for 20 years. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt the whole day settle into a hard, unmoving weight in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I opened the old storage bin at the foot of my bed. Inside were pictures of my mother, cards from childhood, and an envelope I thought I had lost years ago. It was the DNA test I took when I was 23. Harper was the one who hinted back then that Daniel might not be my father. She said it in a joking tone, but there was a sharpness beneath it. I took the test to quiet my own doubt, and the results were clear. Daniel was my biological father, a perfect match. I stared at the paper again, the same paper Harper had seen back then. She saw the truth years ago, and still chose to pretend I was something other than his daughter. She let people believe lies because they fit the image she wanted. She built a family portrait where I did not belong. Sitting on that bed with the test in my hands, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer sad. I was done. Done waiting for Harper to treat me fairly. Done waiting for my father to stand up for me. Done letting someone else choose my place in my own family. The truth was in my hands, and for the first time, I felt ready to use it. The next few days moved slowly, and the house settled into the usual quiet tension that always came after Harper put on one of her perfect performances. She spent most of Monday arranging decorations and talking loudly on the phone about her holiday schedule, her volunteer events, and the Christmas cards that were scheduled to arrive any day. She always acted busiest when she felt most in control, and this year she was especially proud of how the photos turned out. She kept saying things like, "The card is elegant and clean. The family looks very put together this year." By family, she meant the 3 people who fit her idea of a perfect picture. I kept to myself, but every time she said the word family, it reminded me of what she did at the photo shoot. It reminded me of how she tried to erase me with a simple instruction to the photographer. That quiet cruelty stayed with me. It did not make me angry. It made me clear. I knew I had spent years waiting for people to treat me the way I deserved, and I finally understood that waiting had done nothing but keep me in the background of my own life. On Wednesday afternoon, the box of Christmas cards arrived on the doorstep. Harper came inside carrying it like it was a box of fine china. She set it on the dining table and smiled with a pride she rarely showed for anything other than Liam. She opened the box, pulled out one envelope, and held the card like it was proof of her own successful life. She showed it to Daniel and said, "Look at this. We look like a real family. People are going to love this." Daniel nodded, tired and polite, and said, "It looks nice, Harper." She handed him a stack of envelopes and said, "I need you to stamp these tonight. We want them mailed before Sunday." Then she patted his shoulder and added, "I already wrote the addresses on the labels. Everything is ready to go." She did not look at me. She did not ask if I wanted to see the card. In her mind, I was an extra piece of furniture in the room. That evening, Harper and Liam left for a church potluck. As usual, I was not invited because Harper always said, "These events are for the main group. You can join the next one." Daniel stayed home because he was tired, and soon after dinner, he fell asleep in his recliner with the television humming softly in the background. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock and the soft rustling of the tree lights. I walked past the dining table and saw the box of cards sitting exactly where Harper left it. Neat stacks of sealed envelopes waited to be stamped and mailed. The sight of them made something steady rise in me. This was the image Harper cared about more than anything. This was the picture she wanted the world to believe. She had spent years shaping her story, controlling every detail, making sure people saw her as the woman who built a perfect blended family. She polished her life like silver and kept the parts she did not like hidden away. I was one of those hidden parts. I looked at the box for a long moment and realized I had no interest in revenge that hurt people or caused chaos. I did not want shouting or fighting. I wanted something simple and honest. I wanted the truth to stand where her lies had stood for 12 years. I went to my room and took out the envelope with the DNA test. The paper was still crisp, and the numbers were still as clear as the day I first opened it. My father was my biological father. It was the one fact that had never changed, no matter how much Harper tried to bury it. I sat down with my laptop and created a new card, one that looked clean and calm. The front showed a clear image of the DNA test. Inside, I added a short message. For those who never heard the full family story, warm holiday wishes from the Keaton family. There was no anger in the message. It felt like a gentle correction, something quiet but strong. I printed the cards at home with the good paper I used for work, the kind Harper never noticed I kept. Then, I carefully removed her cards from the envelopes and replaced them with mine. I worked slowly, so nothing looked disturbed. I placed each new card inside, sealed the envelopes neatly, and arranged them exactly the way she had left them. When I finished, I sat back and felt something I had not felt in years. I felt steady. I felt like the truth finally had a chance to breathe. As I cleaned up the paper scraps, my phone rang. It was Aunt Tessa. Her voice was warm as always, and she asked how I was holding up. I told her what I had done, and she did not laugh or gasp. She simply said, "You did not hide the truth. You let it speak. There is power in that." When the call ended, I looked at the envelopes one more time. I did not feel guilt. I did not feel fear. I felt like I had finally stepped back into my own story. The next few days unfolded quietly, almost too quietly, like the house was holding its breath. Harper planned to mail the cards on Sunday right after church. She woke early, dressed in her bright red holiday coat, and buzzed around the kitchen with her usual mix of cheerfulness and control. She placed the stack of envelopes by the door and said, "Daniel, don't forget to bring these. Everyone looks forward to our card each year." She said it with that proud little smile she saved for moments that showed off her tidy public image. I watched her from the hallway and felt nothing but a calm certainty. The truth was out of my hands now, and it was headed toward people who had never been given the full story. I rode with them to church, sitting in the back seat while Harper talked about her holiday committee work and the praise she expected for the decorations. Daniel nodded along, looking tired. When we arrived, Harper handed him the envelopes and said, "Drop these in the box on your way in." He did as she asked, unaware that he was mailing a truth he had avoided facing for years. The first message came that evening. We were sitting in the living room when Daniel's phone buzzed. He lifted it, squinting through his reading glasses. His eyebrows pulled together as he read the text. Harper asked, "Who is it?" He said, "It's from Scott and Marlene from the old neighborhood. They said they didn't know Nova was my biological daughter, and they hope everything is okay." Harper's smile faded. She reached for the phone, but Daniel held onto it and read it again. Another message arrived a few minutes later, then another. Relatives, church friends, people Harper spoke to every week. All of them said the same thing in different ways. They were surprised by the card. They were confused. They were asking questions Harper never expected to answer. Harper moved around the room with rising tension in her steps. She said, "This must be a mistake from the printing company. Maybe they mixed up our order with someone else's." Daniel looked at her silently, the same way he did when he was processing something he did not want to face. More messages came in, and now people were sending pictures of the card. One woman wrote, "Harper, is this your idea of a new family update? We didn't know any of this." Harper's face turned pale as she opened the photo. She stared at the image of the DNA test and the simple line beneath it. She turned to me with an expression that was not anger at first, but disbelief. She said, "Did you do this?" Her voice was quiet, not sharp or dramatic. She sounded like someone who had lost control of a story she worked very hard to build. I met her eyes and said, "I did not add anything that was not true." Daniel set his phone down and looked between us. For the first time in years, he did not look away. He asked, "Why were people surprised? Why would they think Nova is not my child?" Harper opened her mouth and closed it again. She tried to say, "It was easier for introductions, and I never meant anything by it, and people assumed things." But Daniel did not look convinced. He rubbed his forehead and said, "Harper, what did you tell people?" She tried to defend herself, saying it was harmless, that people in town did not need complicated stories, that she was trying to create a simple family image. Daniel's voice cracked a little when he responded, "But she is my family. She always has been. Why would you hide that?" Harper had no answer that made sense. She turned toward me and said, "You humiliated us." I replied, "I did not humiliate anyone. I gave people the truth you refused to share." The room went silent except for the soft ticking of the clock. Liam walked in halfway through and stopped when he saw his mother's expression. He asked what happened, and Harper only said, "Someone changed the cards." Daniel corrected her with a tired voice. Someone corrected the story. Liam stared at the floor, uncomfortable. For the first time, I saw him look at me not like the outsider Harper always made me out to be, but like someone who suddenly understood what had been happening all these years. The weight of the truth settled in the room like a heavy blanket. No shouting, no dramatic arguments, just the simple truth, standing where lies had been allowed to grow. Harper left the room without another word. She closed the bedroom door softly but firmly. Daniel stayed seated, staring at the card in his hands. He said, I should have stopped this years ago. I told him, you cannot change the past, but you can stop pretending you did not see what was happening. He nodded slowly, the reality finally sinking in. It was the first time in a long time that my father looked at me like he saw the whole picture, instead of the version Harper had painted for him. And in that quiet, heavy moment, I understood that the truth had finally done what I could not do alone. It forced everyone to see what had been hidden in plain sight. The days following the Christmas card reveal moved slowly, like the house was adjusting to a new kind of silence. Harper avoided me completely. She moved around the kitchen carefully, spoke only when necessary, and never let her eyes meet mine. Her confidence, the kind she carried like a polished accessory, had slipped away. She acted smaller, not defeated but unsettled, like someone afraid of being seen without her usual mask. She stopped attending the holiday gatherings she normally organized at church and told people she needed a quiet season. Everyone knew it was her way of avoiding questions she could not answer without exposing the truth she had tried to bury for years. Daniel moved differently too. He became softer, far more reflective than I had seen him in a long time. He spent long hours sitting on the porch or working quietly in the garage, not avoiding conversation, but thinking through everything that had happened. One afternoon, he knocked on the doorframe of my room and asked if we could talk. When I nodded, he sat on the edge of the chair across from me and rested his hands together in a way that showed how much he struggled with what he wanted to say. He began with a shaky breath and said, I know I should have stopped this before it got this far. His voice was tired but honest. I let Harper shape too much of our life. I did not want conflict, and I thought I was protecting everyone from stress. I see now that I protected the wrong person. I could hear the regret in his words. Not dramatic regret, but the quiet kind that grows only when someone finally admits a truth they avoided for years. He continued, I am not proud of the fact that you felt alone here. I am your father. That should have meant something stronger. Hearing him say the words he had never said before made me feel something I'd been missing for a very long time. I told him, I am not angry that you did not shout or fight. I just needed you to see the truth and not pretend it was not happening. He nodded and wiped the corner of his eye, embarrassed by the emotion but unable to hide it. I see it now, he said. I really do. We sat quietly for a moment, not as strangers in the same house, but as people trying to rebuild something that had been chipped away for years. It was a fragile moment, but it felt honest. In the days that followed, Harper tried to return to her routine, but nothing fit the way it used to. She still cooked dinner, but she no longer gave orders or directions. She still kept the house tidy, but she moved through the rooms quietly, as if she were the one unsure of her place. Liam avoided taking sides, but he was noticeably more polite to me, almost cautious, like someone realizing the person he ignored might have been carrying more truth than he understood. He even apologized once in a soft voice, though he did not offer details. I accepted it because I knew he was not the root of the problem. He was simply raised in Harper's version of the story, and thought that version was normal. A week later, I made a decision that had been building inside me for years. I called Aunt Tessa and asked if her offer for me to stay with her was still open. She said, My door has always been open to you. The certainty in her voice gave me a comfort I had not felt in a long time. I packed my things quietly, choosing not to make a dramatic exit. I wanted peace, not a scene. When I carried the last box to the door, Daniel met me in the hallway. He hugged me for the first time in months and said, Please know you were never the problem. I let the wrong person define what family meant, and I'm sorry for that. I told him that I believed him, and that I hoped this moment would be a chance for both of us to move forward differently. He nodded and promised, This time I will not stay silent. When I moved into Tessa's guest room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The air in her home felt warm and welcoming, not because of decorations or neatness, but because nothing needed to be hidden. I helped her with small things, and she listened to my stories with a patience that reminded me of my mother. One evening, while unpacking, I thought about everything Harper had done to push me out of the family image she wanted. I realized something important. My goal had never been to destroy her or embarrass her. I simply wanted the truth to find its place. I wanted people to know who I was and where I belonged. I wanted to stop carrying the burden of someone else's lie. Harper spent 12 years cropping me out of the picture. I never forced myself back in. I simply placed the truth where everyone could see it and let people decide for themselves. Over time, the calls and messages slowed down. The holiday season passed and people moved on. But the truth stayed. Harper never tried to rewrite my story again. Daniel visited me often, and each time he came, he made a point to say he was proud of me. The peace that grew between us felt real for the first time in years. In the end, exposing the truth did not ruin anyone's life. It simply put things back in the order they always should have been. As I settled into a new chapter, I understood something clearly. Some families are built on stories, and some stories need the truth to survive. My story finally had the truth it deserved, and for once, that was enough. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from.